Everybody. I know it's Wednesday. I wouldn't have known what day of the week it was up until today. It's been pretty routine. Once you start training camp, it's kind of Groundhog Day, in a good way. But having this little change up, having the morning off, players, got a chance to sleep in a little bit was good. And I got a chance to help my daughter actually make breakfast for mom because she wants to sweet talk her into doing some sleepovers. So we've been here in town for close to 3 weeks, and it's kind of nice to see them adapt and adjust. Really just like we have, as a team. It's been neat, really, to get that whole crew together. Hearing some of those stats about all the Iowa guys on the team, that does fill us with pride. We still need to do better. I think there's even more talent in the state to get, but it's been a really fun, couple weeks here, but then I think more importantly, just a really fun last 7 months. The energy, the enthusiasm, the attitudes, have really been infectious. Right from the jump. Right from the first day, I got a chance to meet the team. They had a look in their eye that they were ready to do something special, and they've been bought in. Right from the jump, and I made a promise to them. That I was going to do everything that we possibly could to be the best part of their day. And it's funny how when you're intentional with that, the same thing happens in the other direction, where seeing them becomes the best part of our day. And so us as coaches, these first 6 practices, that's exactly how it's felt. We walk out to practice. There's a lot of laughter. There's a lot of smiles. When that horn blows for the first period, you see them get dialed in. You see them having a ton of fun, but then also working hard and competing and trying to be the best that they can be. You see fire, you see intensity, you see a scuffle every now and then, but they also know how to handle those things, and those break up quickly, and we're on to the next thing. And so our roster right now, I think, is in really good shape. I've said this a couple times. I'm very familiar the last 11 years going against teams in this league, and how phenomenal the talent is, the coaching is, just those programs in general. So I try to compare our team to what we went against these last 11 years, and are we as talented as those teams? I think that's a to be determined type of deal. But I think the things that we can control, the things that I've noticed, is our attitudes are in the right place. We have a love for football. We have a growing love for each other, and I think we've got great numbers. And we have a lot of trust and a lot of confidence and a lot of belief in our roster. So I don't have there's very few guys on our team right now that I would not feel comfortable throwing out there against any team in any situation. So I think if you look at what are the positives of our team right now that I can speak pretty confidently about, is I think we have some pretty good depth. How talented that depth is, to be determined. But I do think us as coaches and across the board, all those 9 positions, there's plenty of guys that we feel good about throwing out there. We know they can hold their own and make some plays for us. So with that, I'm really looking forward to the next practice tomorrow. So they got the day off today, but that next practice tomorrow, we've got some great situational stuff planned. We're going to continue to move forward. It's amazing how fast these days go. They're super packed. We have an open door policy here. I'm not a secretive guy or a guy that holds the cards close to the vest. If anybody wants to come out and check it out, we're out there typically around 10:30 every single day. But really happy with our team. I got to give a shout out to our staff. Number one, our coaches. You talk about getting a team to buy in. You got to make sure that the staff and the organization has buy-in, and they are 100% there. I always like to use the analogy of jumping in the pool. You got the guy that goes in on the shallow end and kind of tests the waters, and then you have the guy that finds the high dive and goes in for the first time there. And I have a staff full of high divers. They are all in. They have bought into the mission and the vision. They have walked in every single day with the intentionality of being the best part of our players' day to help make this experience one of the best of their lives. and then the players have fed off on that. So we have a great attitude and demeanor, and we're going to continue to work. Not a well-oiled machine yet by any stretch. If you came out to practice tomorrow, you'd see a lot of mistakes and a lot of things that need cleaned up. But we're going to continue to work and continue to be our best and continue to move forward.
Everybody talks about working hard, having fun, doing all those things, kind of the cliches. But if someone stopped you in the elevator and said, "What's Panther football under Coach Steps?" What would you say?
Yeah, to me, a lot of people when they talk about what's Panther football, a lot of people think about the history of it, and that's something. I hear new era of Panther football and new dome and new this and new that. We still want to pay homage to our history. I mean, we've had some tremendous success, some tremendous teams, tremendous coaches. Coach Farley, with his run that he had, just incredible. So, we want to stay true to who we are. We want to, be a team that, has great toughness. We want to be a blue collar kind of team that goes to work. But, we talk a lot about pillars in our program. So our three core values are passion, fight, and love. So when you watch us play, you see a team that has a ton of passion, a ton of wearing their heart on their sleeve and going for it, and not having the fear of making mistakes. You have a team that is going to be their very best regardless of the circumstance. You're going to have a team that cares about one another. And talking about our team, I don't really like to make guarantees or talk about championships or wins or anything like that. I like to talk about purpose. I like to talk about, hey, well, this is who I am, and the reason I coach is I love to be a part of the journey. I like seeing how, when a guy walks in as an 18-year-old freshman, how he doesn't necessarily know what the heck's going on, but to be a part of that transformation. Like I think of a guy like Derek Anderson. I didn't get to be a part of that transformation, but boy, here's a guy that started as a walk-on, was a two-way starter a year ago, is now a pro prospect because we've had, multiple scouts come out and see it. I love being a part of those kinds of things. Those things are by far and away more impactful for me than any win or championship I've ever been a part of. And then that continues to go on long after they're done. We continue to be their biggest fan. When they get that first job, or when they announce that engagement, or I get that picture of a bachelor party with all of their UNI football buddies in it. To me, like Panther football is about togetherness. It's about being one. It's about loving their sport, but more importantly, loving who they're doing it with, and then loving it because the community counts on us. I think that's something I take a lot of pride in our program. They feel the same way, our coaches and our staff. We have an obligation and a responsibility, to make a difference. And so, we have a dome where everybody that walks in wearing these colors, they're here for the same reason. They're here rooting for the same thing. And so, for us, we get to have that opportunity to bring people together, but then also to impact everybody else because we get to play a sport that everybody loves.
Coach, when you're in camp and looking for your starting lineup, looking for your impact players, what are the kind of things that you look for out of a player that make you say, that's a guy that can start for this football team?
There's all these critical factors for each position group that you love to see. Like defensive backs, man. You want to see a guy that can tackle. You want to see a guy that can play the ball in the air. You want to see a guy that can play man coverage. So each position has those factors. I'm more interested in response. So when things don't go well, what's the body language? What's the next play look like? Is it a guy that after that play, slouches his head or his arms go up looking for a coach to blow a whistle and say, hey, that was a hold? Or, is it a guy that, taps his head, walks up to a teammate, gets him fired up and refocused to play the next play? The starters are the ones that can do that consistently over time. And, we call it the cycle of the snap here, but, it is about, playing as best as I can from snap to whistle, but then how quickly can I process that and move on? And so when I watch practice, I'm paying really close attention to, okay, that was a great play. What was the response? Hey, that wasn't a great play. How's he going to bounce back from that?
Coach, have you decided yet on a quarterback?
I haven't. So here we are, six practices in, hoping that I would have made a decision, but we haven't. I mean, it's just we've got 3 really good competitors right now that have all shown signs of greatness. All shown signs of being a leader that's going to help us win, and they've all again demonstrated those qualities and characteristics and skill sets that are a little bit unique. So we like Sheck, we like Dunn, we like Daly. They all do different things really, really well. So us as an offensive staff, we're going to have to continue to evaluate, continue to grade those throws, accuracy, completion percentage, all those kinds of things. But then, boy, are there some things within our offense where we can feature all of them? Now are they all out in the field at the same time? I don't know, maybe, but I definitely think that there's going to be a role, whether that's offense, and maybe even special teams and defense, that we can use those guys because I think they all can help us win.
What's the first thing that comes to mind when asked what you've learned in a short time on this job?
Oh man, what have I learned in a short time of this job? Well, the importance of UNI football is probably the first thing that jumps to my head. I remember the first time I went to the Hy-Vee, over on University, like all the purple and everything. And then, I when we're driving with my girls, they're quick to point out the Panther statues. And, I just think, just the community and how important UNI athletics and UNI football is probably the biggest thing I learned. I knew it was going to be that way, but I think once you are in it and learn and see it and feel it, that's it. I'd say the other thing I learned is we've got some really good guys on our team. I think the number one factor for me, being a girl dad, is would I let that guy date my daughter? And it's kind of funny. We had a great conversation. Guys are coming early to our morning team meetings, and then sometimes we go off on these tangents, and one of them was like, hey, who on the team would you let date your daughter? And who on the team wouldn't? And, what was interesting is there was a lot of, I'd date that. I'd let that guy date my daughter. That guy's a good guy. That's a good guy. And I think we have a bunch of guys that, they are awesome individuals. They're awesome teammates. They're awesome friends. And, they continue to try to do the right thing. We're not perfect, but I do believe that the way our program is structured, and it's been like this over time, is nothing that we're doing differently. The environment that the University of Northern Iowa provides, along with our program, these guys are really gonna make the world a better place, and that's really what it's all about.
People saw the social media video of you making the Clydesdale analogy a couple weeks back. Go along with those fronts, how much healthy competition have you seen in the early days of camp?
Oh, a ton. It's been great, and I love seeing too. It's not necessarily an older guy versus a younger guy, and the older guy kind of working the younger guy over. I mean, it is like it's Derek Anderson versus Tucker Langenberg. I mean, we'll have some one-on-one blocking and one-on-one tackling drills, and it's those two guys going against one another. So, there's been awesome competition. Whether it's within a unit itself. We had a great competition yesterday on special teams. Seeing who can stay attached to blocks, who can get around blocks, and so good against good there. We end every practice with best 11 versus best 11, and offense has a play, defense has a play, and just it's neat seeing both sides of the ball have some success, and then again coming together after practice and making sure that you let the guy know that, hey, he may have got you on one play, and hey, keep trying to do that, and you're making me better, or the opposite, giving a guy congratulations and saying, hey man, great practice. So that the competition has been a big part of our identity. We want to make sure we provide so many opportunities, from period 1 to period 20, whatever. So guys are used to going against really good competition, and there's a lot of positions, guys are fighting for playing time, and so I'm a firm believer of playing a lot of people, so it's not just a starter, it's the parent a spare mentality, and how many guys can we get ready to play, and our team knows that, and they're going after opportunities to get on the field.
Coach, from an outsider perspective, wins and losses determine success for 2025.
Yeah.
Internally, what will success look like for you guys?
I think every single day it feels like we're winning. Just I wish I could put into words. We have a team meeting every morning. So guys go to breakfast. We have the roster divided up really randomly into 12 small groups, and so those small groups all eat breakfast together, and those small groups have a leader that that's in charge of making sure everybody's there. And but they get to that team meeting early, and that team meeting isn't nose in the phone, scrolling through Instagram or whatever. There's interaction, there's conversation, there's smiles, there's laughter, and so I just those kinds of things tell me right away we're making progress. And then as we continue on the field, I can just see our team connecting and growing, and really caring about one another. And so for me, success has always, it's, yes, I know how important it is to win, but success for me is, man, when they leave this place, they could look me in the eye and say, boy, if I had to do that all over again, I'd do it in a heartbeat. That was the best thing I've ever done in my life. And then for us then to continue to be a part of those wins that they have long after the touchdowns have been scored and sacks have been made, that's success for me. And being able to see this come to fruition and to be a part of that, I can sleep at night knowing that we're doing things like that.
Schematically, what's the biggest difference that fans will notice this year?
Whew, okay. It'll probably be all three phases are going to look different. We have different structures and formations in special teams. So they'll see those things, and the football fan probably will notice those. The casual fan probably not. But our schemes on special teams all have some different types of looks to them and different types of techniques. Offensively, it's a team where, again, if you really dive into it, it's a simple scheme from a concept perspective, but we really do some different things from a formation perspective, from a tempo perspective, from a personnel perspective. So all those things, when you're watching our offense, sometimes you'll wonder where the ball is after it's snapped. Sometimes you'll wonder, man, all these moving pieces and parts, and it looks like a fire drill at times, where there's just a lot of different pieces moving pre-snap. So you're going to see that. You're going to see a team too on offense that we're Midwest. We got to be able to run the football. Our quarterbacks, though they would probably tell you they would want to throw it 70 times a game, they're all very smart and understand that it's a lot easier to throw it when teams are scared of you running it. So we're going to be a downhill running team. We're going to establish run game. We're going to play with multiple tight ends and big people. We're going to get under center at times, but the complexity of the system is going to be the moving parts. Whether that's personnel, whether that's shift trades motions, whether that's different tempos and varying those tempos throughout the course of the game. And then defense, it's chaos. It's going to be again, personnel groups, but a lot of movement, a lot of getting after the quarterback. We've always had the philosophy, if there's a blade of grass out there or a blade of turf out there, we're going to defend it. So we're going to get up and challenge people. We're going to force them to do the low percentage things. We're going to be okay if there's a big play here or there. But we're going after tackles for losses. We're going after minuses. We want all 11 guys playing with their hair on fire, and the philosophy probably isn't any different than what any defensive philosophy would be. But from a schematic standpoint, you're going to see hockey line shifts on the defensive line. It is not 4 guys. We're going to have 10 to 12 that we're going to play every single game, because even that third string guy, that's 100% is going to be better than that starter that might have a little bit less gas in the tank. So we're going to continue to roll people through. We're going to find really both sides of the ball, different skill sets, positions that they're really good at, and we're going to put them in those positions to, again, accentuate those positives that they have, and again, put our best foot forward, and okay, who are our best players, and let's figure out how to feature them.
And you mentioned taking snaps under center. How many of you guys have done that? I mean, that used to be rare to see shotgun. Now it's rare to see at the high school level snaps under center.
Yeah, every single day. Period one, we have a team stretch, and period two, we do center quarterback exchange. So every single day they get those under center snaps where it's just them in the center.
But were there many that came in with that?
I would say all of them had a little bit of experience. Not all of them will have the volume that we might have. I mean, and again, I'm not saying we're going to be under center like 80% of the time, but yeah, they've done it. I think Jace Nixon, one of our true freshmen for Florida, I don't think he had. He's used to the 4 or 5 wide sets that they play down there. But yeah, they're good with it. They've handled it well. I think really it's less about the exchange and more about can I get comfortable turning my back to the defense and then being able to flip around and diagnose things. And so that takes reps. That takes practice to feel comfortable with that, knowing that if I'm back here in the gun, man, I can kind of catch it and see everything at the same time. Where I'm going to turn my back to the defense, and I got to trust that. Okay, what I saw pre-snap, I can really quick process. Is it the same or has it changed? And so they've all done a nice job with that.
You mentioned that you have an open door policy when it comes to watching practices. Most, or I should say, a lot of football coaches protect their practices better than Fort Knox. Why are you different?
I don't know. Maybe it's because I grew up around football, and I've been around it for so long. Nobody's doing anything different. Nobody. Like I seriously. I mean, yeah, there's maybe some neat plays here or there, or some neat blitz patterns that some teams are doing, but I mean, man, football is football. So we aren't going to hide anything. Our big, to be honest, I talk about how champions they don't make mistakes because they know exactly what they're doing. So it isn't necessarily about out scheming a team. It's just about outplaying them. Being able to execute when the situation is critical. Boy, if you focus on being overly complex, are your players going to know what to do when it really matters the most and when the stress is high? So I don't know. I mean, I think some coaches, I'll be honest, I don't think all of them are paranoid. There are definitely quite a few that are, but I don't know. I think of some of my close friends in the sport, at this level. Again, we're all from Ohio, so maybe it's an Ohio thing, but it's kind of like, come on out, see what you do. We're happy to talk you through it. We're happy to show you what we're doing, and I think also, we have a responsibility to grow the game too. I talked a little bit about the responsibility of being, impact people and making a difference in the community. But I think us as coaches and players as well, like how can we continue to make the game popular, and that I think having an open door policy is part of that. We did a girls flag football camp this summer. That's part of that. So what can we do to keep people interested or intrigued and wanting to come back to see more?
And when most new coaches come in nowadays, there's a lot of program turnover. For you, it seems like quite the opposite. Only 11 transfers coming in. What about your process coming into here has kind of led to stabilize the program rather than see a lot of guys go out the door and a lot of guys come in?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't think a lot of times people give credit to previous staffs, and so I do want to give our previous staff a ton of credit where I think they recruited some awesome individuals, some resilient individuals, because that was something that we kind of found was, okay, here we are coming off of a tough year, complete coaching transition. I mean, almost every single position group had a new dude that was going to lead the room. And so with how college athletics is, it's very easy to leave. But they decided to stay. So I think they were, the previous staff did a great job recruiting great individuals that were bought into the University of Northern Iowa and what the university can do for them in the future. And so then it was up to us to show them what the mission and the vision and in the direction that we were going to go. And they were really quick to jump on board and stay with us. And we're real intentional too. When we got here, 11 transfers for me feels really high. But when we got here, there were just a few holes, through attrition and injury and things like that where, boy, maybe we had a good, talented guy initially, but boy, if that guy got hurt, we had freshmen. And so it's like, wow, instead of having to count on a freshman, can we find a piece or two, still pour into that freshman and get them ready to go, but can we give them some time, and give us some time to develop that young guy and get some depth, and we were, again, great timing with those transfers. Every single one of them fit a position of need, which was the first requirement, and then the second requirement was we knew them previously. That's always the trick when you're starting to deal with transfers. Your window to get to know that guy and what he's all about is really small. And so I think that sometimes you hear about transfers not working out. It's because of that. You don't what you see is not necessarily what you get. For when you recruit high school guys, man, you're getting to know them and their family and their program and everything about them, for over a year. And so again, moving forward, that is always going to be our philosophy. Is I'm a big mirror guy, so instead of looking out the window, what are the problems that others can help me solve? Okay, let's look in the mirror and figure out what can I do to solve the problems. And the same thing with our team. Okay, so if we have a position group, that maybe we have a superstar that gets plucked and goes to a big program. Well, let's look within our program. Let's find the next man up and let's pour into them. Let's invest in them. And I do think when you do that, you can kind of weather the storm of this era of college athletics where it does feel like a revolving door at times. Man, find those freshmen, find those high school seniors that really want to be at a place like this. There's the boy, we want you, but you want us, and then hey, pour into them, invest in them, next man up mentality. And so that's really that's always been our philosophy as far as building a team.
How much money do you have available for players, and how does that change from what you had at Drake? I imagine is a lot different.
Oh yeah, I mean obviously the scholarship versus non-scholarship, that's a huge difference between the two. We have some clubs and some people that are together to help us with extra funding. I'm of the philosophy is if you're going to do something for one guy, you got to do it for everybody. And so things like nutrition, things like doing extra special stuff for our players. It's not just for a guy. It's going to be for the team. And our team, they know that there's not one person that's more valuable than another. Everybody on our team, everybody on our roster has a role, and every role is equally important. And so I've been pretty stubborn, when it comes to doing something special like giving a guy extra money, to stay here. I'd much rather, okay, you want extra money to stay here, well, I guess you can go ahead and go. I'm gonna pay attention to this guy now, and I'm gonna pour into him. And again, I think using extra funds, how can we help make the experience, develop our players, help them be the best they can be. I'd rather do that for the whole team as opposed to just a guy here or there. Football is really difficult, I think, unless you have Power 4 money, and you can pay everybody. I just think our sport is really different, where the minute you start treating one guy special, well, that guy's job, boy, he's counting on a lot of other guys to help him do a great job. If it's a wide receiver, that quarterback's got to get him the ball, and the offensive line's got to give the quarterback to give him the ball. And so I've always had the philosophy of like, hey, if we're going to do it for one person, we got to do it for everybody. Everybody here is equally important. There's not one guy that we're going to be treating special. We're all for one.
Does that come from talking to other coaching friends
Yes, it just the minute you start treating people differently, your locker room becomes really fragile. So we have a really great locker room right now. A team that's bought in, that cares about one another, that's not about what's in it for me. They're all, hey, what's in me for our team. That's what their philosophy is and their mentality is. So I've had coaches where, again, why do we do what we do? We want to be a part of a journey. We want to help somebody transform to be the best that they can be, to be the best part of their day, to have an experience that's going to be one of the best of their lives. Like doing that with a revolving door where there's constantly people coming in and going out. Like I don't know if you can ever really have the relationship that is going to last forever, which is always the goal.
Along those lines, go.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. What can you tell us about the impact of the neighboring state tuition rate on the program?
Whoa, that's big. I do want to say that we're still looking in-house. We're still going to be Iowa heavy. I just have so much respect for the high school coaches in this state, and 11 years of coaching Iowa high school kids. Like you can't miss. I've said that before. There's various levels of talent and how successful they've been, but man, great, the best teammates, the hardest workers, the most dependable. So we're gonna really be intentional and find, okay, can we find all of our needs in the state? But boy, there's some really good football in all the states that touch us. Wisconsin is, I think, kind of the next spot that we would probably look. They're really close. There's not a whole lot of competition in the state, and so the proximity and that demographic there is a big deal. But now all of a sudden those players aren't as expensive as they used to be, for us. And so okay, well now we can take that money that we would have spent to get them because they're out of state, and we can start to use those funds to do other things. And so all of that our whole roster is going to be in state here very, very shortly. And so to be able to use those extra funds where okay, we were allocating them for the extra cost of being out of state, to be able to now take those funds and use them on the whole team is going to be a big help.
And when it comes to your receiving room, there's not a returner that has had over 200 yards. So you mentioned your quarterback, not knowing who your quarterback. How confident are you that whoever takes the snaps under center has the tools around him to be successful?
I tell you, so I can remember who asked the question, like, what do you, and maybe it was you, that what are people going to expect when they see, offense, defense, special teams? That group is exciting. There is a ton of upside in that room. There's a lot of guys that can make great catches, that can make a guy miss, can get the extra yards. They're tough. They're great blockers. Coach Jack Johnson has done an amazing job of instilling a workman's mentality, no block, no rock, and they get after it. And again, I kind of see receiver similar to D-line. D-line, like if you don't have more than a pair and a spare in those groups, those guys wear out with during the game. Well, receivers the same way. We want them every single snap to look like they're running a go ball. Whether they're going to run to block the safety or whether they're trying to score a touchdown, we want it all to look the same. Well, that's hard to sustain over 4 quarters, and so we have a really good room, although not as experienced. The talent, I think, is opportunities. Sky's the limit for them. I'm really excited about our receiver room. They've made a ton of plays both in the spring and then here in these 6 practices. There's a lot of guys to throw to and hand the ball off as well.
When it comes to evaluating your team here in year 1, how helpful is it to have Coach Nelson, Coach Van Wy around, guys who have been in the Valley and know the league so well?
Oh, it's great, and I'll throw Coach Hupke in there, even though he hasn't been here. He coached at South Dakota State, before he coached with us at Drake. So, their experience here is super valuable. The experience of knowing what to expect week to week, opponent to opponent, away venues, all those kinds of things have been really helpful. But their love for UNI and how much much pride they have of being a former Panther exceeds all of that. And then how much our players care about them, both of those individuals. You know, if they knew nothing about the league, those two things, their pride of this place and how much their players care about them, I would be fine with. They are phenomenal human beings. Our players love those two guys, and they have, and I don't want to short count. I mean, they are both really good coaches. You know, they are tremendous workers. You know, Coach Van Wy, he's been my problem solver. You know, he's the guy that, you know, being not too far removed as a player, he kind of knows how things operate here. So he's been a tremendous asset to helping us figure out, okay, you know, what's this look like when we're moving in the dorms? What's this look like from a housing perspective, meals perspective? But, you know, above all that stuff, just who they are, the pride they have in this place, being former Panthers, they're just, you know, I'm very grateful they're on our staff.
Since the spring, Coach, you know, let's start defensive line. You were banged up there.
Yeah.
And that was a group that kind of, at times last year, got overwhelmed a little bit. How's that group look? Who's been maybe the most impactful player so far through six practices?
Wow. Well, the nice thing is all those guys that were kind of on the shelf in the spring, you know, they've been active, you know, here in the fall. So, boy, just off the top of my head, Jackson Storts, you know, there's that, I forget what movie it is. I think it might be Hangover. The dad says, like, you never walk away from a table while you're on a heater. And, like, Jackson the other day, I think he had, like, 5 plays in a row where, you know, he's got tackle for loss, knocking a ball down, another tackle for loss, chase down. I mean, so Jackson's had a really good first 6 practices. Owen Ostrowski's a new player, but, you know, if you do any kind of research on him, was very impactful at Tulsa. Like riding a bike, you know, he didn't do much in the spring, but, you know, he steps out there and he's just very athletic, very strong, very good, both the run and the pass. You know, Jack Creeves is another guy that you know, is gonna be real impactful for us. You know, Malik Stewart, you know, his length. You know, we've had a ton of balls knocked down by him. You know, he's given the old seatbelt sign after many of those here, these first 6 plays. You know, but there's a bunch of guys. Again, you know, we're playing a lot of people, and you know, they're all very capable of, you know, holding a double team, getting off the ball, chasing QB down, and then, you know, getting a buddy to do it for him in the next snap. So, but those guys, you know, just off the top of my head, they've done a really great job of, man, they've showed up. They've made impact plays. You know, on offense, you always want to stay on schedule, and they've made the plays, you know, here these first 6 practices that, man, they, you know, we're going to struggle to convert on third down. Jamarian is another guy, you know, that was a mid-year dude. He played in the spring, but, you know, now that we have more people, he's shown up more because he's not taking every snap. He's fresh, you know, kind of like the philosophy of playing a lot of guys. So Jamarian's done a great job. I mean, just, yeah, that room has some bodies now. I'm pretty pumped up. Jalen Pettis, another one. He's new actually to us in the summer. You know, he came in the summer, and he's going to be another person that people are going to like, oh, man, who's that? Oh, that's Jalen. He's pretty special. So he's got some good twitch to him and some good bend and plays really hard. And that's in that position. You know, if you're a little bit light, maybe you're not as athletic, but you're playing as hard as you can. It tends to work out.
Same thing, let's look over the offensive line. You graduate both tackles. Who are the front runners at left and right tackle?
Yeah, you know, Blake Anderson's going to be a stud. You know, he's a good leader. I definitely think you know, he's going to be a guy that's going to stand out. You know, he's going to be a safety blanket for those quarterbacks that are in there. You know, the neat thing we saw these last couple practices, so Kyle Kelly coming off of surgery, knee surgery, he's gotten in there, you know, these last couple days and looked pretty good. You know, I mean, a little rusty, but, you know, kind of like riding a bike. You know, Gavin Proudfoot's been in there and has done a nice job. You know, Jack Hearn, you know, he's a guy on the interior that's been showing up and doing some nice things. You know, that group, you know, with Coach Nelly, you know, he's going to get them ready to go. You know, so whatever experience we're lacking in some of those positions, we do have quite a few guys that on offense, and we feel really good about.
What was the conversation like So what was the conversation? What was the decision-making process going into that?
Well, that was the one thing I did. Is I said, I promise I won't make you do that again. And it was more questions coming from me. It's like, how did you do? Like, how did you survive that? Yeah, everybody talks about Travis Hunter and like playing wide receiver and defensive back. Like that's easy compared to what he did, man. He's like putting his face in the fan every play, being in the trenches. But he, to be honest, whatever we would have told him to do, he'd have done it. If I'd asked him to play both ways, he would have done it. Now behind my back, he'd been like, he may have had different words, but I love that kid. I mean, he is everything that is right with college football. He's the guy that showed up not asking for anything other than an opportunity, and he worked his way into being a captain and being a pro prospect. Like it's been neat having scouts out of practice every day, and so we a lot of times it's a need thing. Okay, do we need tight ends? Do we need DNs? And we felt like having him in that tight end room was important for us. Schematically, we want to make sure that we have multiple tight ends that we can play with, and so that made a ton of sense to keep him there. And again, seeing him as a blocker, that's probably his strength, is when we attach him to the formation, and he can get off the ball and cut people off and move people. But I think he's really grown as a route runner, and he's got some pretty soft hands for a big guy.
Who's the incoming freshman least likely to get a red shirt?
Wow, that's a good one. We have a really good group of freshmen, but it does feel like it feels like we're pretty solid, to where we're not going to have to play any of those guys. If I had to rub a crystal ball, the position group where we usually it's usually a DB, so maybe a corner. So we've had some good plays made by a few of our younger corners. But yeah, like I don't think we have anybody that we're going to have to play as a freshman. Though we do have two 300-pound defensive tackles that are freshmen. So, Theo and Braylon, they definitely look the part already. I think a lot of guys on the team thought they were a transfer from somewhere because they just look older. They're already 300 pounds and massive. So they're learning how to play the position, and maybe they provide some depth down the road. But right now, I think our upperclassmen are gonna help us and give us the depth we need.
Do you like the way your schedule is set up?
For the season?
Yes.
I've heard a lot like, boy, that's a tough stretch. I was like, we're in the Valley. Like, how could you not have a tough stretch? It's just, it doesn't matter. Like, we, from the first game to the eighth conference game, it doesn't matter what order it is. It's just going to be a fist fight, every single game. So, I don't really, to be honest, pay attention much to the schedule. We have 12 opportunities, 12 guaranteed opportunities to try to be our best. And so that first opportunity being Butler, here in the Dome. I'm really excited about that. I guess, do I like the schedule? I love that we open up at home because I've never been to a game in the Dome in my life. And so that's just means it's going to happen sooner rather than later. So I'm pretty pumped about that. But yeah, the schedule, I think we have the opportunity to play a game we love. And so, whoever's on that schedule, I'm just going to be grateful to be a part of it.
You guys were not, picked to finish in the top half of the conference. How much do you talk about that?
None. The players do, and in my opinion, they can. If they want to talk about being disrespected or being the underdog, I'll let them do that. I don't like focusing on what others think and what others perceive that we are who we are. So, if the players want to use that as fuel, awesome. If they want to use that as motivation, that's great. Teams don't respect us. Coaches don't respect us. When I start hearing negative talk, I kind of look at them. Well, what have you done to prove that you deserve something better? And nothing. So we haven't earned anything yet. So instead of focusing on what others think, let's focus on what we think of each other. And so we haven't paid much attention to the preseason stuff.
How much growth do you want to see out of your guys between now and the 3.5 weeks before you kick it off for real?
Oh, in a perfect world, yeah, when we kick it off for real, we're this well-oiled machine and we're not making any mistakes. I am a realist, though. We're going to have our good days and our bad days, and my dad, always would say to me, it's never as good as it seems and it's never as bad as it seems. So I try to remind Coach Nelly of that when we're walking off the practice field and it doesn't feel like we blocked anybody. I'm like, hey, man, we're going to turn the tape on and there's going to be some good stuff in there. So, from a growth perspective, I just want to make sure we continue to control what we can control. Are we grateful to be out at practice? Do we have joy in what we're doing? Are we staying optimistic and positive with one another? That is important to me. If we can continue to do that even after a bad day, if we can come back from a bad day and have a good day, I think we're having growth. And again, it's us collectively as a team. How can we end each day better than we started it? But then individually, when we look in the mirror, like, okay, did I leave myself better than I found it when I woke up? And so that's growth to me. Can we continue to think that way? Can we continue to have the belief that, my skill, my talent level, my abilities, if I continue to show up and be disciplined and do everything I can, I'm going to be good enough.
You don't have any, you're not certain yet on quarterback, but you have a deadline when you want to name one, so you can really start game planning for it. He's going to take the bulk of the snaps.
Yeah.
All three of them might play.
Right.
But he's going to take 80% of snaps. When do you make that decision, or do you have a deadline when you're going to make that call?
Definitely, like day by day. We're okay. Is there somebody that's pulling away from the pack? Is there some separation that we see? If I had to give myself a deadline, we're going to have a scrimmage. Our first scrimmage will be a week from this Saturday. So we get to that scrimmage. Probably going to take the red shirts off of those guys and see how their performance changes when all of a sudden, like, those defensive guys aren't stopping anymore. They're not giving you the room to throw. Like, I'm going to have to step into this throw now knowing that it's going to hurt, where when I have that red shirt on, I know I can basically operate like no one's around me. So I think, that scrimmage could tell us some things as far as, okay, let's move forward here. But again, like I said, they all have great skill sets and qualities and characteristics. How can we be creative offensively to keep them involved? I think that's important. You guys had some good questions today.
Mid-season performance.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, appreciate you guys coming. Yeah, good talking to y'all.